Boundaries define us. They define what is me and what is not me. A boundary shows me where I end and someone else begins, leading me to a sense of ownership. Knowing what I am to own and take responsibility for gives me freedom. Henry Cloud. Welcome, and I'm so glad that you're here. Here we talk about personal development, relationships, and mental health, just to name a few. My name is Carmen, a registered counsellor who is passionate about coming alongside people. This podcast is designed to create a discussion and bring awareness around what matters most in life, and that includes you. The goal is that each episode will leave you feeling encouraged, equipped, and empowered so you can live your best life. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode. I hope you've been well, and I'm so excited to be spending this time with you again this week. My recent projects have been around some maintenance, and as I mentioned in my previous episode, I've been reorganizing my space. So I thought, why not redo and paint my wardrobe? So I've been on a bit of a roll. So I took everything out of my wardrobe, gave it a good clean with some sugar soap, and gave it a couple of coats of paint. It took longer than I anticipated. However, here are some lessons that I have taken from this experience. Lesson number 1. Don't hang on to things that you don't need anymore, as it can hinder you from enjoying the things that you do use and enjoy. I've been working towards a more minimalistic approach. My family would think otherwise when it comes to my shoes, but hey, I'm a work in progress. I've been aiming to be more intentional with my time and belongings, and if you have any tips, I would love to hear what's worked for you or what you're doing to be more intentional when it comes to your time and the things that you buy. Lesson number 2. Sometimes you need to clean up the mess of the past to make a new start. I've learned that when it comes to painting, preparation is vital. As much as I would have loved to skip this step, I wasn't willing to take the risk and not have a decent paint job. I felt the preparation was more time consuming than the painting itself. But if it's got to be done, it's got to be done. Lesson number 3. Sometimes it needs to get messy before it can get better. Can you picture it? I had to take everything out of my wardrobe, and that was a mission in itself. Fast forward, the last coat was drying, I had paint all over my hands and in my hair, but I had done what I set out to do. Now that I've gotten the paint out of my hair and everything is back where it belongs, I have a sense of accomplishment. So, am I encouraging you to go and paint your wardrobe? Not necessarily. But what is something that you can have a go at that gets you outside of your comfort zone? With Christmas around the corner, I thought boundaries might be a topic worth covering. While boundaries are required all year round, I wonder if holidays and events can highlight our need for boundaries all the more. The Cambridge Dictionary defines a boundary as a real or imagined line that marks the edge or limit of something. While boundaries are required to show what we are willing to tolerate, boundaries can look different for each individual and circumstance. Boundaries usually align with our values, family of origin, and experiences. The lack of boundaries can leave us feeling like doormats, while having boundaries that let no one in can leave us feeling isolated. So what is the sweet spot? While boundaries take on all different shapes and sizes, we are the only ones who can define them for ourselves. You can start to define boundaries by listening to that hunch or that gut feeling you get when something doesn't seem quite right. Take the time to process what is happening to you. We can tend to ignore these feelings or downplay them. The more we ignore the hunch, the less in tune we become with ourselves and our self-awareness. By keeping check of ourselves, we may be able to minimize situations down the track because we tuned in and took the appropriate steps. If you feel stuck in this area, you might consider counseling to assist with gaining some self-awareness. Setting boundaries invites change and everything that comes with it. Get ready for some discomfort and adjustment when it comes to a new way of being in your relationships. Questions that you can ask yourself are: what happens if I don't change? Can I continue functioning the same way in this relationship? And what is stopping me from changing? Saying yes or saying no isn't necessarily the issue. Perhaps it's not feeling that you're able to choose the yes or the no. This is when we go into autopilot and lose our ability to respond and find ourselves reacting. Moral of the story: change is bound to happen one way or the other. It's not always comfortable, sometimes it's necessary, and not everyone will like it. Articulating our boundaries is an essential step of the process. If we don't communicate our boundaries, others may not know where we stand. In a previous episode, we looked at ways to communicate, and I will add the link in this episode's show notes where you can listen to ways to communicate if you wish. Whenever we give anything new a go, a good reminder is that it takes practice. Grace is needed when we don't quite get it right, and to simply learn as we go. Some practical steps you might like to try when it comes to boundaries are: set timeframes for less pleasant events. Decide what you're willing to commit yourself to and have an exit strategy. Make a pros and cons list around setting specific boundaries and the consequences for both sides. Take the time to define your values, your negotiables, and non-negotiables. Reinforce the boundaries that you have set and remind yourself of why you put them there in the first place. On a finishing note, boundaries can look different for each of us, and also considering the various spheres of our lives. As my gift to you, I have made available a worksheet so you can define what boundaries look like for you, and you can gain access to this resource by heading over to carmendebono.com.au/resources. The worksheet looks at 3 spheres: associates, friends, and inner circle. So you fill in the blank spaces by asking yourself what qualities you require and need to let someone close. For example, would you allow an associate to become a friend if they lack a certain quality? What characteristics does a friend or family member need to have that will enable them to be part of your inner circle? The aim of the resource is to take a moment and think about what qualities are required for each of these spheres. So I wish you all the very best as you define your boundaries. And until next week, take care. So that's it for today's episode. As always, I'm grateful for the opportunity to come alongside you. If you know someone who might benefit from hearing this episode, why not share it with them? For more content, head over to carmendebono.com.au, and I look forward to coming alongside you again next Wednesday.